Uh-oh, everyone. Welcome back to Nails Before Films. I know it's not Halloween season anymore, but I do what I want on this channel, so I'll continue with horror movies for a couple more days. Definitely not because I was over ambitious with my schedule and couldn't finish before November. Besides, Halloween is all year, so deal with it. Anyway, today's movie is Basket Case, a very independent, cheap, but interesting film. I actually watched all three movies and it was quite the experience. So in the first movie, we meet Dwayne and Beliah Bradley, two brothers who were conjoined at birth. Dwayne looks normal while Beliah is a hideous meat blob on his side. The two were forcefully separated by doctors whom their father hired. After the surgery, Beliah was thrown away, but Dwayne took him back and they killed their father. They then killed the doctors who separated them. In the process, Dwayne falls in love with the girl Sharon. Beliah, who becomes jealous, kills Sharon, so the two brothers fight. Both of them fall out of the window seemingly dead. In the second movie, we learn that they're not dead and are rescued by Granny Ruth, who has a sanctuary for unique individuals. Beliah falls in love with Eve, a female blob similar to him, while Dwayne falls for Susan, Granny Ruth's granddaughter who seems normal. A journalist and her accomplices want to expose Dwayne and Beliah, so the unique individuals kill them. As they celebrate, Beliah has sex with Eve, which is very weird to say the least. Dwayne wants to leave with Susan, but she reveals that she's been pregnant with a freak for 6 years. Dwayne pushes Susan out of the window in horror, killing her. Then, the deranged Dwayne sews him and Beliah back together. In the last movie, Dwayne is separated from Beliah again and restrained by Granny Ruth. Eve is now pregnant and about to give birth. To help her, they visit daughter Hal and little Hal, who's also a freak. Dwayne escapes but is locked up after asking the sheriff's daughter for help. Meanwhile, Eve gives birth to 12 baby Beliahs. Two cops go in to capture Beliah but end up killing Eve and taking Beliah's babies. Beliah kills everyone at the police station, gets a mecha suit from Hal, kills the cops who murdered Eve, and fights the sheriff who gets eaten by his babies. The movie ends with Rue and her unique individuals crashing a TV show, claiming they're here to stay. Now let's talk about my thoughts on the movies. I think they're fun and very unique. The fact that they made the first movie with only $35,000 is just impressive. The premise is very interesting too. You can draw so many themes from the movie. There's the obvious thing of you shouldn't judge people by their appearance, and I love how they take that Hallmark message and make it into a horror movie. And it's just so curious too. Like, Beliah is the nasty little bastard, but at the same time, his aggression is kind of justified. Everyone except his brother and aunt thinks he's the devil despite he hasn't done anything. After being cut from Dwayne, he is thrown away like garbage, which is terrible. Well, it's awful for him to try to rape Sharon and kill her afterward. You can understand his frustration that his brother can have these things he can never have. So Beliah is really a curious character. He's terrible and most people won't like him, but we don't really perceive him as evil either. At the same time, I love how Dwayne's character is done. He really loves his brother and doesn't want to be separated from him at first. I think it's interesting that he actually doesn't desire normality at first and feels he has a responsibility toward Beliah. However, it's also understandable that he will want a normal life after being separated from Beliah because he now knows how life could be on his own. The character development is done so well and organically. I really didn't expect to see that in a low-budget horror film. Next, there's the idea that Beliah represents Dwayne's darker self, which is why he's hidden in the basket. It's a metaphor for how we hide our ugly selves and are internally afraid of them reeling their ugly heads. I don't know if that's the film's intention, but if it is, that would be a great message because the movie essentially tells us that we shouldn't be scared of and hide our darker selves. They're actually normal. And in the sequels, we learn that if we get to know them, we'll realize they're not as ugly as we thought. Again, I don't know if that's their intention, but it'd be cool if a cheap horror movie has such an amazing scene behind it. Anyway, let's move on to the second movie. I like how Dwayne's character basically switches with Beliah's. Beliah now lives with his kind, and Dwayne becomes the odd one out. I absolutely love Granny Ruth. She just has all these conflicting personalities, and Annie Ross make it work so well. She's generally well-mannered, but menacing and brutal when her children are threatened. She's extremely kind to the unique individuals, but stern to them when she needs to be. She's also somewhat unsettling, which plays so well with the strange nature of Basket Case. The unique individuals are nice. The movie does a great job of portraying them as normal, kind people who are just physically weird. But I have to say the sex scene with Eve and Beliah is really something else. It's extremely weird, but at the same time, me Blobs deserve love too, I guess. I don't think it's that gross, just a moment that made me go, oh, they actually went there. However, I feel kind of bad for Dwayne. I think it's normal for him to want to live with less unique individuals, especially after what happened to Sharon, but the movie sort of makes it seem like a selfish thing to do. I think that's a bit unfair to him. It's perfectly normal to want to live a different life with people who are more like you, especially when Beliah is with his people now. I know the point is that the unique individuals are normal too, but it's fine that Dwayne wants to live without his brother. I feel really bad for Dwayne when he becomes insane in the end and sews him and Beliah back together again. At that point, he probably thinks the only way for him to live is as a freak, so he must be with Beliah. I know he's wanted by the police, and that's probably the main reason why they keep them hidden with the unique individuals, but I just wish there were other options for Dwayne. That kind of ties in with my thoughts on the third movie, which doesn't resolve the issue between the Bradley brothers, in my opinion. Dwayne is still somewhat crazy and thinks he has to be with Beliah. The love-hate relationship is never really solved. They just have a common enemy, so they work together again. The third movie isn't bad in my opinion, but the story is just a bit lacking. The core focus of Basket Case should be on the relationship between the Bradley brothers, but that isn't really explored in this movie. I like the idea of Beliah having kids. I think it's really sad how Eve got killed. The bus ride part is super fun, especially with Annie Ross's personality, and the mega thing is just so random and fun. But the movie as a whole just feels like they just threw random things in and hoped it worked. Why is the sheriff's daughter a dominatrix who wants a baby Beliah as a pet? That part is just weird. It worked somehow. It's still fun, but I really want Dwayne and Beliah more in this movie. Lastly, the special effect is just so fun in the Basket Case movies. They're not amazing, probably because of the low budget, but they're so over the top and fun. Beliah is a unique, terrifying little meat blob. The unique individuals are definitely unique. And the gore is awesome too. Overall, Basket Case is very fun and basically cheap horror films at their best. It's unique, funny, and somehow turns its weakness into strength. The actors were all very inexperienced. For most of them, this was probably their first time before a camera. But their somewhat quirky performance worked so well with the film, it's amazing. That about concludes my thoughts on the 3 Basket Case movies. I enjoyed all of them, but I'm happy they didn't make more. It stopped at a decent place, and I appreciate that. Hope you guys like my Beliah nails. As always, like, subscribe, comment, share, do what you want, keep nailing it, and be unique individuals, people.